All right, we're recording. Okay, thank you for being here. My name's Justine Froelker, and my heart's racing a lot, and my mouth is dry, and I'm pretty nervous about my first courage hour. But I figure you're at home and just as stressed or feeling as much as I am, so you're just going to be here in it with me. So welcome, and thank you for your grace as I stumble through this because we've never done this before. I'm recording this, a little bit of just like housekeeping. You're all muted because your children are loud. My dogs are loud. Like, we're just gonna keep you muted because background noise is really distracting. You have control over who you see. Whether or not you just want to see me or you want to see everybody, you are in control of that, okay? So you can, it's usually at the top towards the right, like for me it says speaker view or gallery view, but you get to control that, okay? You can also, if you don't want to be on camera, don't be on camera. It's totally fine, all right? You don't have to be on camera if you're not up to it. I just put on a power blazer and lipstick because I was really nervous. So there you go. If you're in your pajamas or you have pajama pants on and your hair is pulled up in a messy bun, we don't care. So just show up, receive what you need to receive in this time, and let me pour into you. Let me hold some of what you cannot hold on to anymore. Let me hold it for you. And have a meeting on your calendar that maybe is a little fun and life-giving, I hope. So I have got a list of questions here that some of you have sent in. I am going to go through those questions. You can also use, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat button. You can use the chat box. I am not awesome at multitasking and teaching and reading your chats at the same time. I'm just not that talented in that aspect of life. But I will kind of refer to the chat box if something comes up for you and you want me to address something or you want clarification or I talked too fast, because those of you who do know me well, I talk fast and I'm wordy. So you might want to grab a pen and paper. But this is being recorded and you'll be sent the link. To be honest, you're going to be sent the link on Monday. And there's 40 of you on here, so you can hold me accountable to that. Because after this call, I am done working. I am going to set a boundary. Plus, my accountability partners are really mean when I break that boundary. So get an accountability partner like that. But so you can use the chat box. What else is, oh, the other thing. I'm going to ask you for grace because for the first time ever, I'm going to attempt to live stream this on Facebook, like at the 30-minute mark, because you guys pre-planned and registered. So we're going to, like, at the 30-minute mark, I'm going to try to live stream it to Facebook and maybe get those people to register. I don't know, we'll see. We're all trying to figure this all out. So that's kind of actually where I want to start. We don't know what we're doing. We've never done this before. None of us. None of us have ever been through a global health pandemic. We have never been forced to stay at home. We have never had this many feelings, probably. And I'm going to tell you, I did a workshop this morning and somebody messaged me and they're like, you talked about feelings like the whole time. And I was like, yeah, I'm a therapist by trade. And resilience requires you to figure out your feelings. And so whether or not you are doing your feelings with self-awareness throughout this time, you have feelings during this time. I think a lot of us, I did this in I don't know, one post this week, but like, if you're struggling with feelings or even realizing that like, maybe I'm okay, maybe this isn't that big of a deal for me. I want you to stop and pause and think about, how much have you yelled? I've yelled at my dogs a lot. Man, they eat twice a day and they have to go out a lot and they bark. Like, how much have you yelled? How much wine are you drinking? How much Netflix are you watching? How much are you working? How much sugar are you eating? The question is really, what are you doing to numb and avoid and escape all of these feelings that you're having, whether or not you feel them consciously? And so if you're one of those people like, I don't think this is that big of a deal. I think I'm okay. I want you to ask those questions. How much you eating, how much you drinking, how much you sleeping, how much you moving your body, how much Netflix binging you doing, where you at with all of that? Because most likely our brains just don't like to feel feelings. Our brains like to be super comfortable. And so we will avoid at all costs what is happening. So just think about that, okay? I do have this great list of questions, and you can use your chat box if you would like. Oh, first, this is technically a courage hour. So if you have a drink, cheers. It can be water or tea. I don't care. You don't have to drink, okay? Cheers if it's water, because I have a lot of friends that are sober. That was my first drink of wine, okay? Because I was too nervous. Okay, my first question that I want to talk about. I love this is how succinct our brains are. What's the number one or top 3 things we can do to help us cope with this season we are all in? I've had that message a lot. People, they want this zinger. They want a fix all, a cure all. And I think one of the biggest things that's going to help us through this really weird and difficult time is it's grace, it's generosity. And for some people, the word grace is super loaded. So if that's not the word for you, that's fine. It's this generosity to yourself and to other people. We don't know what we're doing. We've never done this before. People aren't sucking on purpose. They aren't. Even though it doesn't take long to be in a grocery store to think that they are, depending on how you feel about things, right? But they're doing their best. And so it's this element of deep breathing and grace, and that has to be their best. I'm going to choose to believe that this is their best, even if it's not good enough for me. And so then I have to figure out what I change about my life. One of the other things, because I'm not going to pick just one thing because I'm too wordy. One of the other things that is going to get us through this time is lots of boundaries and talking. You better be asking for what you want and need during this time. From the people that you're stuck at home with, from the people that you work with, even if you're not physically with them, you have to ask for what you want and need. People cannot read your minds throughout this process. And right now, because this is also weird and uncertain and difficult and full of feelings, you might not even know what you want and need during this time. And one of the best ways to figure that out is to speak and to reach out for help and ask for help and to talk to your people. Because oftentimes when we're asking, when we're talking, that's when we find our words. When I ask for what I want and need, it's usually in the asking that I'm able to get the clarity of what I actually want and need. But I have to first speak the unspoken. And when I do that, I have to set boundaries. So some of you might have been seeing my lunch break of courage, but I release a new video every day on social media. But one of them was just my husband Chad and I figuring out how to ask for what we want and need during this time, because he is very stressed, locked in a bedroom all day long, working, talking to lots of people, and managing a company that furloughed 40%. So his workload is increased, things like that. Whereas I am a speaker and a corporate trainer whose events have all been postponed. And so I'm talking into a webcam by myself for the most part. I don't usually get to see this many faces because even if I'm doing a workshop, most of the time it's just me looking at myself. It's so lonely. And newsflash, I'm a talker. I'm a processor. Chad is not. And so what we discovered super quickly in this process, he sat down at dinner and I was like, so what was the best part of your day? You want to hear about my day? And he's just and I was like, what's happening? And he goes, so I realized you haven't talked to anybody all day. And I was like, yep, you're right. Social media. And he's like, I've been talking to people all day. And I was like, okay. And I go, well, I need you to be here and be present and see me, because how I'm wired, I really need to feel seen. And he goes, okay, can I go outside and pick up dog poop first? The dude needed some alone time first. He needed to be outside. So he set the boundary. I will be here and I will be present, and this is what I need first. So, I mean, that is what I mean by ask for what you want and need, and be realistic about what you have left to give and what you need to do to fill back up to give it. Like, of course, he can sit there and be present for me. I had to ask for it first. And then also he had to be realistic and self-aware of where he was coming from, that he needed to take a break first before he could be present. So that, I think that's the biggest thing, is we have to ask for what we want and need and set the boundaries during this time. People cannot read our minds. They never have been able to read our minds, and they really can't read our minds during this time, I don't think, because it's just really uncertain and everyone's responding in a really different way. And that's okay. There is not a go-to way of how to respond to this process. Like, there's just isn't. There's going to be some of us that will be okay. There's going to be some of us that are not okay. And both of those things are okay. So those are a few of my top things. I mean, I have real tangible things. I'm going to keep those in my back pocket in case I need to fill the hour. Okay. Okay. Because we've never done this before. All right. Then I had a bunch of questions. I highlighted them because they were all like the same vein, which I was not surprised. They all had to do with emotions. I hope you guys realize that a courage hour, even though like you were like, I said, grab your favorite drink and join courage hour, it really just also meant that you were coming to a group therapy session where I just talked at you the whole time. So all these questions: how to build emotional awareness, how to develop ability to feel emotions without letting them overtake us, how to stay positive during this time when everything seems so draining, I can't see the end, how do you keep everyone upbeat and happy during this time, how do I manage the overwhelming emotions of managing households, mine and my parents, aging parents. I never thought I'd get so bossy with my parents at such an early age. Like, stay inside, stop talk, like wear your mask, like whatever. And my parents are in Iowa where they have not done stay at home. How do you manage working remotely, virtual school, facing the pandemic so that we can calmly connect with our families? So the first one, like these all are in the same vein of emotions, but one of the things that I want to start off with, like this, how to stay positive during this time when everything seems so draining and I can't see the end. What if we actually didn't put an expectation on ourselves or others that you had to stay positive all the time? Because you don't. This is brutal. This is really difficult. What is not okay though, and what is not courageous and what is not healthy is when we wallow in it. And I cannot tell you how many times I've said that in my lunch break of courage. I think my last words, my dying breaths will be, feel your feelings, name them appropriately, cope with them in a healthy way, allow them to move through and rewrite. Like, I will say that till my last breath. I don't need you to stay positive all the time because that actually doesn't honor your truth and it's not realistic. What you also though can't do in that next breath is wallow in the hard stuff. Feel the feelings. Don't over-attach to them. Don't over-identify with them. We feel our feelings. We speak our feelings. We cope with them in a healthy way to allow them to move through, because if we don't, we are our emotions all of the time. And that's exhausting for us. It's exhausting for the people who love you. It's exhausting for the people you lead. We want to be with our emotions. I want my emotions to enhance my life, not write the entire story. And so I don't want you to be positive all the time. I want you to feel both. I always come back to the permission of the and. It is possible to feel more than one emotion at the same time. I will be grateful and I will use gratitude to wade through this sucky time, because there's a lot of things that are sucky about it. And I won't over-attach or over-identify when the waves of sadness and disappointment and frustration hit me. I will also, if I feel the anger popping up, I'm gonna become self-aware and ask myself what it's really about, because anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is almost always really shame or fear, loneliness or hurt. Now there is such a thing as righteous anger, which I right now there might be major examples in our lives where you have a right for righteous anger, where something is not right. Most of the time though, our go-to emotion is going to be anger because it feels easier. And because when our brains are wired to stay comfortable, it just like anger feels safer to fly off the handle, but it's usually about hurt or loneliness, fear or shame. One of the other things too, this came up in one of my workshops this week. I mean, if you're really feeling major extremes of emotion, one of the things that I always have to check in with myself, how tired and hungry am I? Like, do you need a freaking snack? Lonely too. Like, and right now I think we're lonely. You might be in a home full of people. It doesn't mean you're not lonely at all. We are very limited in our methods of connection right now. And I keep saying this, but we're not limited in our presence and how we show up for people, and sending Marco Polos, scheduling a Zoom chat, actually showing our faces on Zoom chat once in a while, picking up the phone and talking, Facebook Messenger, FaceTime, whatever it might be, but like you're not limited in your presence. And so are you lonely? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Because that's a pretty decent checklist to check your emotions. Kind of going further into that emotional piece, I like that how to develop ability to feel emotions without letting them overtake us. So this is where you get the full Dare to Lead lesson, because I kind of never miss the opportunity to teach how the brain is wired. Your brain is wired for connection. Your brain is wired for community. That in of itself makes you vulnerable, because connection is vulnerable. Vulnerability defined, emotional exposure. We're going to talk about how we feel, risk, and uncertainty. Because when I talk about how I feel, I'm going to feel at risk, and I also never know what I'm going to get back, which is uncertain. And this season feels really uncertain and risky, and I have a lot of feelings. So it's vulnerable in of itself. Because of how our brains are wired to stay safe no matter what, and stay comfortable. Good guys, bad guys, dark, light, black, white, easy, hard. To stay safe. It will do anything to stay safe. It will judge people to stay safe. It will hurl our emotions to stay safe. Like, you find yourself judging a whole lot during this time, it's because your brain doesn't want to feel all the emotions. It's way easier to judge someone at the grocery store than for me to lean in and get curious about my fears around catching corona, my fears of when is life going to return to normal, my fears of how long this is going to last. So rather, I'm going to hurl it onto them and judge the heck out of them, because my brain deems it as easy and safe. And so what happens when that hooks us by emotion. And so I think I've taught this lesson like 6 times this week, but when you are hooked by emotion, your body tells you every single time something happens, you feel the angst, you feel the hook, you feel it, something in your head, something in your chest, something in your belly, most likely. Okay. So ruminating thoughts, racing thoughts, tunnel vision, pounding heart, racing heart, churning belly, brick in your belly. You are hooked by emotion. And you've got to know your tells. When I feel my pounding heart reverberating through every cell of my body, I know this is not a time to have a hard conversation with Chad. I know it is not a time to talk to my family about something difficult. It's not a time to post on social media. It's not a time to scroll social media. It's not a time to check the news. It is a time to stop, create pause, and remove myself from the stimulation. And right now, there's a lot of things to stimulate you. You have to stop and create pause. Because when we're hooked by emotion, your thinking brain becomes really irrational, and your fight, flight, or freeze response is going. And that's when we hurl. That's when I say more curse words than ever, and I yell at the dogs so much. And in that next breath, I have to get curious and realize, all right, hold on, what's up? What's this really about? What's the story I'm making up? What's happening here? Am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I lonely? Am I scared? Is it just a bad day? Did I not sleep well last night? Is it just a day and I need to give myself permission to take a break? And so like, it's okay to feel overwhelmed in this season. Again, I always go back to, it's not okay to wallow in it though. We have to cope with it. And so when I let the several F words fly to the dogs, and they're so cute, but they just are driving me crazy. I gotta breathe. I have to slow down my physiological response. I need to pause. I need to put my phone down. I need to step outside, take a deep breath, feel the sun. I gotta play a song. I gotta do 10 jumping jacks, 10 squats. Like, do something to bring your thinking brain back on track. And so the easiest ways to do that, pay attention. What's happening in your body? What's happening in your head? What do you feel? What do you see? What do you taste? Count the shades of green. That's my favorite one. You guys have heard me teach that all the time. Count the shades of green. Breathe. Take 3 deep breaths to bring your thinking brain back on track. Because when you do that, your blood pressure lowers, your heart rate lowers, and now your rational thinking brain can come back online a little bit. And that's when we start to get curious about what this is really about. And right now, it might not be about anything that's huge, because this is just a really hard, uncertain time. And so like, I think the biggest thing that we can do for our emotions right now is to stop expecting yourself to feel a certain way, because it's going to change a lot. Like, what if we actually laid down our expectations? What if you really stop and think and feel about what's going through your head, what's happening in your body, and you became really self-aware of what is flying out of your mouth or out of your fingers when you're emailing or texting or calling somebody or posting. How to manage overwhelming emotions and managing households and things like that. So one of my big things is how much is in your control? There's not a lot in my control right now. I easily can get sucked into this space of worrying about all these events that I had. And they're postponed. I will believe that they are postponed. And so easily, especially if I'm hooked by emotion, I can fall into that fear of, what if the dates don't come through? What if everyone wants deposits back? Like like all of these fears, I all of a sudden go down this rabbit hole of fear because I'm trying to manage stuff that's not mine to manage. It's not in my control. What is in my control is to step up and serve during this time. It's to show up for people in my presence. It's to love well and lead well. And in order to do that, I have to love and lead myself first. You don't get to love and lead others well without doing it for yourself first. You cannot give what you do not have. And I know that feels difficult in this season, especially those of you who have lots of kids at home and both parental figures are working. I get it. And if you don't find 5 minutes to fill yourself up and restore and rest in something that you enjoy and love, you have nothing to give from. We cannot give from an empty well. Stop trying. You are not an endless vat that you can keep serving and leading and loving others without filling yourself up. And so how do you manage all of it? You take care of you. Yesterday on one of my workshops, one of my participants said, I need to treat myself like I treat my children. Have you eaten? Are you tired? And I was like, or you could, reword that. And I would like you to mother yourself. Let's spin that. Are you mothering yourself well as you mother everybody else? Because most of us don't. Do you parent yourself well as much as you parent the people you love and lead well? Because you got to start there. Those I think were the emotions. Okay. I mean, we can come back if anybody wants to type anything in the chat box. How are we doing on, it's almost time to try a live stream. Okay, I'm going to try to do it. So cheers, take a drink or a deep breath. or take a drink of water, you can take a deep breath, but I'm going to try, I don't know how to do it. I had it pulled up, but it's just spinning. Let's try it again. And if you have a question, put it in the chat box for me. Live on Facebook. Here we go. Someone who, oh, I don't want to share it on a friend's timeline. I got a lot of notifications, people. I wonder how many people are trying to get into this call and chat hasn't let them in. All right, it's trying to pull up. Okay, while it's trying to pull up, it might not work. Who knows? All right, so one question that I got. I love this one. How do you have courage to speak up for what you want from someone without letting fear get in the way? Asking for what you want and need is scary. It's supposed to be. It's vulnerable. Like I can ask Chad to like be present and ask me about my day and everything like that. It doesn't mean that he has it to give though. It doesn't mean that he can. It doesn't mean that he wants to. And so like having the courage to speak up for something that you want from someone, it means asking afraid, because you're going to be afraid and brave in every moment because it's vulnerable. If it wasn't vulnerable, it wouldn't be uncomfortable. So I think it's that piece of like rumbling through and kind of naming it. Like, what are you fearful of? I'm fearful that they're going to say no. I'm going to be fearful that it's not going to be enough. I'm fearful of that they don't want to, that they can't. Because when it comes, especially this is one of the toughest and most annoying lessons of this work. Just because I ask for what I want and need does not mean that the person has it to give. And sometimes they're not willing to learn how. They're not willing to figure out how to give it to me, in which case I have to rumble with the grief and the loss that comes with that. And I got to go find it somewhere else. I got to go figure out how to get it for myself. Because what I've really learned throughout this work is I'm done living my life mad and resentful at people for not meeting my expectations. Sometimes people just don't have it. And I do choose to live my life believing that they're not withholding it on purpose. So like, it's so hard. I don't think we're, having courage to ask for what you want and need does not mean that you're not scared to ask for it, because it's courage. So it's always going to be a little scary. It's going to be uncomfortable. Courage over comfort. So I will be afraid and brave, and I will ask. And then I will hope that I will get it. And if I don't, I got to rumble with the grief and the forgiveness and move on and figure out where else to find it. So, it is so, I know. That counts with communication too, for sure. Like, I think communication is a skill that we have got to learn. And if we think about it, most of us didn't grow up in a home where we were taught how to communicate, or we saw a healthy example of communication. And now you're trying to do it in a quarantine, staying at home with people, while you also try to homeschool your kids and work your jobs and all of that stuff. And so like learning communication, how to ask curious questions. Take the word why out of your vocabulary, because why is defensive. You come at me with a, why do you feel that way? Or why'd you do that? I immediately have to defend myself. Instead, use words like, how come? What's that about? And you use curious language instead of that defensive language. You use language like, tell me more. What's this? Help me understand. Walk me through. Don't come at me with a why though. You'll be shocked how much your communication changes when you take the word why out. It changes everything. One of the other questions, there are many people that have lost their jobs or have been furloughed due to COVID-19? What advice do you have for those individuals and their family members to deal with the shame of losing their job? One, I love that the word shame is in this question. It makes me so proud. Makes me so proud. So shame, we got to define it, because shame, I am bad. Guilt, I did something bad. Shame is focused on self. Guilt is focused on behavior. I think people who have lost their jobs or been furloughed or gone on pay cuts or time cuts, all of these things, like the first thing I think a lot of us have to remember is like, there's not one way that some people will feel about that. Some people will be excited by it. Some people will be scared to death. So I think one of the things that we got to remember is that there's not this given way that someone feels if they've been furloughed. And so there's not one way to respond to it. And so if someone is feeling shame, I want them to really speak it. I want them to name it. I want them to understand how shame shows up for them. Shame is that deeply painful feeling that we are unworthy of love and belonging. And I love that this question included the word shame, because people who have been furloughed right now is of no fault of their own. They weren't let go for performance, for not following rules, whatever else. They're a casualty of circumstances. And so I want them to realize and recognize the shame story that they tell themselves. What is that attaching to maybe their own history of worthiness? Like, is your job your everything? Is it really fear of the financial piece? Is it grief? What's really happening? Because for some people, they might need to shift it to guilt. They didn't do anything wrong when they lost their job. What can they do to make it a little bit better? Like, where does their control lie? My biggest piece for shame work is to help people realize what their truths are. You are not your job. I feel like I'm my job a lot. So I'm preaching to the choir there for sure. It is not your worth. You are worthy just as you are, no matter how much money you are making, no matter if you were furloughed or if you're now working more than ever because everyone else was furloughed. Speak your shame so that you can rewrite it. What's the shame story really about? And most likely it's more than the job. It comes back to our own worthiness and self-worth and self-aware and how we're coping with our emotions. I don't feel like I answered that question, but that's a really hard question to answer. I didn't plan. Courage hour with shame is overwhelming. I'm going to drink. Just a sip, not a whole bottle, okay? No numbing. Okay, the next question. Let's see what else we got. Oh, a hard time balancing work and home. Boundaries. I love boundaries. Okay. First off, there's no such thing as balance. I loathe that word. I hate the word balance. I think balance too often means that we're just undulating between the two extremes of life. And here's what happens. You're like doing it perfect. You're doing it great and you're doing amazing. And then something happens, life happens, and somehow you end on the whole other side of the extreme, and then you shame yourself, you judge yourself, you berate yourself, and it bounces all the way. Like, our health and our happiness lies in the messy middle. There will be some seasons that I'm working a lot. It cannot come from this place of hustle and striving and earning my worth, because that is really dangerous for me. It's very dangerous for me to be doing nothing. And so I want you to find a harmony of what works for you in this season when it comes to your work and home life. Because right now, they're the same place. Forever, we have expected people to bring work home. But don't dare bring your personal life to work. Well, now you don't have a choice, because there's kids in the background of every Zoom call, because a dog's gonna bark. So now they're in the same place. And so I want you to determine what works for you and for your household, for your family. And let's be honest with our circumstances. That might look different next week than it does this week because things are changing fast. And so like give yourself permission to change it up, to try something new if it stopped working. I think there will be some people that will be able to have work hours. For other people, their work hours will be 11 o'clock at night because that's when they can sign on. And to have that grace and flexibility for people is really important during this season. But that's also, we have to also talk about boundaries, because if we're honest with ourselves, you could probably be working 24/7. Even if your house is full of kids and dogs and pets and birds and all of that stuff, you could probably be working a ton because it's remote. Everyone has figured out how to go to remote, which means you could be working 24/7, not healthy. What does rest, pause, margin look like for you? For me, this is how bad it got. I had to download apps to lock down my phone. Like it literally locks me down. It locks me out of social media because a lot of my job's on social media. So it locks me out. And yes, I could go in and unlock it, but that would require 3 clicks. And that is 3 clicks enough for me to be like, nope, you are off. It's time for pause. You are off. No social media today. No work today. But I also have found that when I create pause and margin in my life, I think of some really good ideas. So I have to have a running list, because I used to be like, I got to film this video right now. Nope, just have a running list and it's there when you're back on. So I think find what your harmony looks like between work and life with boundaries and lots of begin again grace. Because you're going to mess it up. You're going to screw it up. You're going to realize that what was working last week is no longer working this week. Whether or not it's because of what's going on for a child or a pet, or what's going on at work, or your mood. So you give yourself permission to struggle, grace-filled permission to fall off track. And in that very next breath, you begin again and you do the next right thing. And maybe reach out to an accountability partner. I have a lot of them on this call. I'm so not going to be able to work after this. I knew it. Let's see. One of my last questions from here, and then I'll go to the chat box. When you are disappointed in someone, how do you lose the attitude when having a conversation? That's a good question. I'm so good at attitude. Yeah. So that's about me. When you are disappointed in someone, that is more about your stuff than their stuff. What's it bringing up for you? What's it really about? Were you clear about what you wanted and needed? And if you didn't get it, were you clear about how disappointed you were? Did you let it fester? Because how often, maybe even now more so than ever, we just let things slide, in which case they fester. The unspoken is never benign. The unspoken is usually poisonous, and it will eat you from the inside out till you explode. So my feedback for that question is, I'd want you to get self-aware. I'd want you to get curious about what's happening for you. And then we also, like, if you did ask for what you wanted and needed and they weren't able to deliver on it and they've broken trust, then we get to talk about forgiveness and grace. And forgiveness is real tricky. Forgiveness is about us though too. It's not about the other person. And of course, before you go into any hard conversation, you make sure you're not tired, you're not hungry, that you take a couple deep breaths and you remind yourself of what your truth is. Because with everything that's going on, hard conversations will be even tougher right now, I think. And so I gotta do my own check. Those are my questions that you guys all sent in. So I'm gonna look at the chat box. So if you have anything in the chat box, you can send that to me. We failed miserably at going live on Facebook I guess that's why people pay producers for Zoom. I'll look into it for next week. Okay. Selfishness versus asking for what you need is a difficult balance to reconcile. Yeah. I mean, I think we're all selfish. We are all selfish. That's how our brains are wired. Let's be honest. We're like super wired to stay safe and to get what we need and stuff like that. And so that it is a difficult balance. I dispel the negativity that we have around the word selfish. I want you to make sure that you're taken care of. Do you have what you need? Are you full? What do you need from your people? And ask for it. Let's see. Great points on asking for what you want and need. If they don't give it, find somebody else. Suggestions when you're trying to get yourself to give yourself what you need. For example, you feel better with a walk, but you can't seem to get off the couch. That's a really, really good question. What if we started small? What if it didn't have to be all or nothing? Like, because I think so much, we self-sabotage so quickly because you don't go for the 30-minute walk. Well, it's really easy to convince yourself off the couch trying to do that. What if you stepped outside and walked around the yard for 5 minutes? What if we gave ourselves permission for smaller steps rather than the all or nothing? Because I always go back to the permission of the and. What's the middle? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I also think like that also goes without, because I'm a therapist, I will say this, I did a lunch break of courage on this, but like for some of us, we will need to reach out for help during this time. For some of us, we will need to call our doctor and get some medication. For some of us, we will need to call a therapist and schedule an appointment. For some of us, the anxiety and the depression will be a little bit too much. And so we need to reach out for help. And so if it's something that like, my tells for that is like, your sleep is super, super off. Your food is super, super off. You're drinking a lot. Like there's changes in your basic human obligations: eat, sleep, drink water, move your body. Also, if you're having really hard, dark thoughts, it's time to ask for help and reach out. So like, you just have that awareness for both, I think. How do you get rid of all the shoulds? I put so much pressure on. Heather, have you heard my should teach? All right, it's every therapist's running joke. Stop shoulding all over yourself. I mean, every therapist has that joke in their back pocket. I have a lot of word rules. I have a lot of rules. I'm a rule follower. Breaking the rules makes me sweat. And so one of my word rules, watch how much you should. Watch how much you say the word should to yourself and to other people. Even going back to Leela's question, I should get off the couch and go for a walk. Do you need to? Do you want to? I shouldn't have another cookie. Do you want another cookie? Do you need one? Should is shaming. Just like things like, if I say in my head, like, Chad should do those dishes. He knows I have 2 big workshops today. I've already done the dishes once. Chad should do them now. Do I need him to? Because I need to ask him. Should is full of shame. Shame is never motivating for change. Because shame, remember, I am bad. I'm a failure. I'm such an idiot. I'm not enough. Why would I change anything about my life if I didn't feel worthy of change? Shame will never be motivating for change. Take the word should out of your vocabulary. What do you need and want? From yourself, from your loved ones? What do you need and want? Ask. Create baby steps. And when you screw it up and fall off track, which you will, you begin again. My other word rules, I hate the word but. I don't say the word but, I say and. It makes grammar really difficult sometimes, but I don't care. I also end sentences and prepositions. I'm sorry, Bayless teachers that are my Bayless friends that are on here. Yeah, I try not to say the word why, how come, what's this about? And when I'm having tough conversations, I say the words "for me" a lot. For me, this is what I feel. For me, this is what has worked. For me, this is not working. Because I don't know what you have going on unless you say it. And so I need to make sure I am saying my stuff for me. So those are all the questions. What other questions do you have? You guys, if you guys want to unmute yourself now, we have like 12 minutes left, actually 13. I don't do math. Anybody else have other questions or anything that you want clarification on or help with? It's Courage Hour, and we've got 13 minutes left. I think you can raise your hand in the participant box also, or you can unmute yourself. I don't care. Nothing? How do you encourage courage in others? Ooh. You walk it out yourself. I think modeling is the most powerful tool we have. When I walk out and model this imperfect courage life, when I mess it up and circle back and make it right and learn the lessons, like when I model it out, courage is really contagious, and people get curious about it, and they want to do it for themselves. They want to learn for themselves. And so I think the biggest thing is you walk it out yourself imperfectly, because that's courageous. And it's really scary. I don't ever do anything, like anything like this, without being scared, because it matters to me, and it's courageous. So that is, you model it out. Leela asks, how do you help little kids with feelings? It's been a couple weeks since I did a kid video. I think the biggest thing for kiddos during this time is to let them feel what they are feeling, and for goodness sakes, give them the words for those feelings. I think so many parents get freaked out by, like, I don't want to tell her that she's anxious because then she knows she's anxious. She knows she's anxious. She feels it in her belly. She knows something's going on. Give her the words. Sit with her. Sit with him. Sit beside him with it. Breathe. Like, let him talk. And I'll go back to Skip's question. Model it out yourself. You speak your feelings. You don't hurl your feelings. You cope with them in a healthy way. You model out so they see it in you. They see you struggle so that they know it's okay to struggle, because when we struggle, we rise. Lisa asks, I feel guilty because I am happy during this time. People want me to be sad, but I'm not. How do I not feel bad because people want me to be upset? I keep trying to say that, like, on all my videos, like, if you feel okay, freaking be okay, man. We need more people being okay. Like, because in the moments that I'm not okay, man, I want to sit beside you as you're feeling okay. And what'd you do wrong? Because that's what guilt is, remember? Guilt is I did something wrong. You've done nothing wrong because you are happy during this season. I think that's where we go back to expectations. Let's stop expecting people to feel a certain way during this time, or to respond in a certain way during this time. What if we sought to understand how come they're feeling that way? And so, like, if I have someone in my life like you, Lisa, that's doing well and like happy during this time, as someone who chooses to live her life with courage and wholeheartedness and empathy, I want to sit beside you from afar, obviously on a video chat, and seek to understand what's up with you. What are you doing that you're okay, that you feel happy? Can you tell me more about that? I want to seek to understand. Same thing with someone who's really struggling. I want to seek to understand what has got them to that point, what's going on for them. And so you don't need to feel guilty. You've done nothing wrong. I want you to own that, because then you honor your truth. And when you honor your truth, you serve the world with your gifts. And if you're going to guilt and shame yourself through it, or because of it, you won't be able to serve the world with your gifts. And right now, this world needs our gifts desperately, no matter what your gift is. Tracy, how does a type A planner cope with all the uncertainty? Well, that's a great question, Tracy. Do you have an answer? You don't have an, what's in your control? It might even sometimes be helpful. I used to do this with clients. I would make them, not make them, but I would ask them to write a list of what was in their control. And then we would go through it and we would kind of like organize it. And they would realize that the only thing in your control is how you think, feel, and behave. That's it. You have no control over when this ends. You have no control over how it ends. You have no control over how your spouse or partner feels, or your children feel, or how your dogs behave, or what happens in your job. Like, your control is in how you respond. And so that type A person, like I used to say this in my office, like you gain ultimate control when you give up all control. And also, please speak kindly to yourself and with grace, because I love a lot of type A people. I'm married to one. Like, I love them. And so like, it's not helpful to get too trapped up in it or to compare yourself to others. But I will say, the more you try to control what's not in your control, the worse it gets. So, what other questions? Skip, that's a good question. What's your non-Justine, non-Brené book suggestion for inspiration? That's a hilarious question. So not a lot of people know this, but on my website, I have a whole resource page full of like the weirdest, craziest, most diverse books ever. I'm a person that reads like 5 books at a time. I love books, and I go in spurts. So like, I've been on a whole like racial reconciliation spurt. I might have to think about that one, Skip, and send you an email. Right now I'm reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And I mean, I think a lot of people would consider that a woman book, but it is not. It is an everyone book, in my opinion. I got to look at my book list. I get in trouble for my book list. Chad will oftentimes come to my nightstand and be like, what ones have you read? Can we donate them? Like, mostly because I spill water a lot because there's too many piles. So like, I'm gonna make myself a note, a book suggestion, but I definitely go to my website, my resource page. And I had somebody email me. I don't know if Becky's on here, but she was like, I didn't know you had a resource list. And I went and looked at that book list, and she was, it made me fall in love with you even more. They are the most random books ever. And I was like, I know. So, books for Skip. I will send those to you. Any other questions? You got like 5 minutes. Because we're going to respect time. Any other questions, comments?
Unmuted myself. I unmuted myself because I have a question. I have a hard time.
How amazing was it to meet Brené Brown? Kelly, are you my super fan? There's always a Brené Brown super fan in every room that I speak in. I mean, Brené Brown's exactly like she appears to be. She's pretty awesome. I don't have a selfie with her because I don't want to be a fangirl. So I've never had a picture with Brené Brown. And I will admit to you, now that we're in quarantine, I greatly regret that, because that would make my profile probably go viral if I had a picture with Brené Brown. But I don't. I think there's another facilitator on here. I don't know if she's got one or not, but Brené is awesome. She is awesome. I'm anxious to see what is going to happen with the next book and the data and stuff like that. So yeah. What other questions do you have?
Can you hear me or no?
Elizabeth, are you trying to talk? Because I can't hear you.
Yes. I don't know how to unmute myself.
And it says you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
I don't know why.
I don't know what, I think you guys should be able to, oh, you hear her? I don't hear her.
Oh.
Now I hear you.
Oh. I like tried to talk earlier and then you just kept talking and I was like, oh, okay. That like embarrassing moment when you speak up and no one hears you and then you're like, But my question is similar to, or I guess the opposite of Lisa's. Like, I totally get that. Like when people feel guilty because they're being really happy. And I had some friends that are feeling that, and I didn't want to make them like feel sad. How do you sit beside people in your sadness and not bring them down or stay level and just allow them to be in their happiness? Because I caught myself not wanting to share some of my recent stuff because I didn't want to put my sadness on people. So I ended up isolating.
That's a really great question. One of the first things that a lot of us struggle to remember is we don't make anybody feel anything. I am in charge of my emotions.
I sometimes feel like I'm not.
Well, I mean, that too. I mean, when I'm yelling at the dogs, I don't feel super in charge of my emotions. But like, there's this element of like, someone might do something or say something that leads me to choose the emotion of anger or sadness. But like, people are in charge of their own emotional well-being and their emotions. They're in charge of speaking them. And so I think like, that's where I want people to lean in to that empathic thing, that empathic skill set of, okay, so they're really happy, but I'm really struggling. And you can even ask people in your life, like, you know what, like, I love that you're doing so well in this season. Like, I don't feel like I am. And I'm having, like, what if we just said that and said like, and I don't want to like bring you down. And at the same time, because I think what you will find is most people will be like, of course I want you to talk to me about it. I am your friend. When you censor yourself or you don't ask for help because you don't want to be a burden or you don't want to bring other people down, you are trying to determine someone else's boundaries for them. That's not your job. It's my job to be able to say like, you know what, like I can't be here for you in this way.
Yeah.
That's my job to say that. It's really difficult though. I hear that a lot as a therapist. People are like, well, I don't want to be a burden to someone. Like, I don't want to ask you for help because I don't want to be a burden. Well, if I can't help you, I will say I cannot help you. That is my boundary to set. And when you don't reach out for help, you are literally stealing a chance for someone to love and lead you well. You are not protecting them from crap. You're stealing a chance for them to love you and lead you. That was good.
I love the passion.
Did someone in my team write that down? That was a good quote.
I have a lot of your quotes written down.
Thank you for that question, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Oh, and let me circle back. I'm sorry I didn't hear you talking. All right, you got 1 minute. Any final questions at all? Okay. Well, you all know where to find me. I share this work on social media every day. I have a lunch break of courage video releasing every day. I am doing workshops the next 2 weeks if you would like to attend those. And then also I'll be doing this courage hour the next 2 Fridays at least. They did just release here in St. Louis that we're in this at least till mid-May. So maybe I'll do more. We'll see. I don't know. I'll see. You guys can let me know whether or not this is worth your time. But if you found this helpful, refer people to me. Like, point them to my social media, invite them to next week's courage hour. That's honestly how people find this courage work and find my work. And we could all use a little bit more brave in our lives, especially during this season. So most of all though, just thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for trusting me enough to pour into you for an hour during this really difficult season. So thank you very much for being here, and make it a great weekend. And I'll send you an email. You'll get an email with the link, okay? So thank you guys. Have a good weekend.